Well, hello, this is Chris Parker with the Business Simplicity podcast. And I just had a conversation with Lenka Pincot, the Chief of Staff to the CEO of the Project Management Institute. And what we talked about was leading from love, and in particular, the Rumi quote of, as you start on the way appears. So Lenka, why would this be really valuable for people to listen to this conversation?
Well, this conversation was really awesome. And Chris, thanks so much for having me. We talked a lot about leadership. We talked a lot about importance of human connections, human relationships. And this quote, I love it because that's about self-confidence. That's about trusting yourself and just starting your journey. So I think that's pretty valuable for anyone who wants to improve their leadership skills and have a bigger perspective and just walk forward.
The Business Simplicity Podcast, where we learn about strategies and tactics to succeed through simplicity, with your host, Chris Parker.
And welcome back to the Business Simplicity Podcast. This is Chris Parker, and I'm having a conversation with Lenka Pincot. And she's normally based in Paris, but at the moment, I believe in the south of France. And we worked together. We were comparing notes over 20 years ago on a large transformation with a mobility and financial services company in Europe. She was based in the Czech Republic at that time, but she was working with us in the team in the Netherlands and throughout Europe. And I think we've been watching each other on LinkedIn as she's been going through different journeys as a consultant and as agile transformation, agile coach. And more recently, she's the chief of staff to the CEO of the Project Management Institute, the global nonprofit that are helping people manage change throughout the world. And we're going to have fun with this conversation. So Lenka, thank you so much for the time to join the podcast and have fun talking about, well, we'll get into the quote that we're going to wrestle with, and I'll introduce the concept, but maybe over to you and allow you to share a little bit about yourself. And then we're going to jump into a specific quote from the poet Rumi, which is going to be a fun thing, and see where it goes from there. So Lenka, thank you for joining.
Hi, Chris, and hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. So, Chris, you are absolutely right. We worked together more than 20 years ago. And for me, that was a forming experience because it was my first ever large international project. And it was also my first ever experience with true digital transformation. We were building a data center at that time, if I recall, and it was amazing. And I often use you as one of my leadership stories as an inspiration because I was very young. I was like 20 something, right? And I remember that we were having some struggles on the project, like some struggles with communication and teamwork. And it was a very large team with a lot of sub teams. And then at a certain point of time, you said, hey, guys, we just need to understand each other better. And you made us take personality questionnaire. And for me, it was like mind-blowing thing. I was like, wow, like, what is this guy doing? Like, how does it relate to the project? Because at that time, I was really focused like technical and processes and stuff. And you brought my attention to that people element. And we did that exercise. We learned about ourselves. We learned about how to communicate better, and it definitely improved project performance. And it stayed with me. And I often use this technique sometimes when I feel that it's needed. So with my own teams, I use it as well. We do these personality questionnaires, and then we talk about it, and we share, and we help to find each other connections. So thank you for that. It was a really great experience, and definitely formed my further journey throughout my career.
Yeah, that was an amazing project. We had so many amazing people in there, and the personality questionnaire we used was the MBTI, the Myers-Briggs type indicator, which I think is a powerful tool. Some groups that I work with, that is still part of their almost daily conversation. So like I myself am an INTP, intuitive thinking, perceiving, and that means something to people. Meaning they know that when I'm interacting with large groups of people, I like to perform. I like to get on the stage, but that can also be quite exhausting. And they all, with the perceiving at the end, as opposed to judging, they also know that I like having lots of options open, and so sometimes maybe people can help me, but just by, hey, Chris, maybe we can start closing the conversation. Maybe we can start, making some decisions to move forward. And what I love about that is, and I've continued that through my career. The more I understand myself and my own strengths, weaknesses, my own personality, my own preferences, then I can actually embrace others better. So then you can say, oh, that might be why that person's doing this, or this is why that person has that need. And I think the more diversity of personality, of character, of thought on a team is just makes so much sense. So, but how do you use it? Like, what have you discovered with yourself? I think reflecting on
Right.
your reflecting on your inner self, reflecting on your essence. How does that help you lead better?
Well, so to be very honest, it helped me to accept myself because again, I was very young. It was very early stages in my career. I think I was like 22 maybe, so really very green, and at that time, I always heard a lot of feedback that I should be more sensitive and kind of like more feminine. And instead, I was more structure driven. And I was, I have master's degree in computer sciences. So I was always very interested in technology. And that kind of like didn't fit in that picture with a young girl. And I struggled with that because I heard it from my other girl colleagues, and I felt bad about myself because I felt I'm different and I should not be. And again, 20 something. So I was a little bit lost in that. And my MBTI type is ENTJ with a very strong T. And that's the rational thinking that really dominates my way of looking at things. And then when I saw it in the test, for me, that was, first of all, it was a surprise that it can even be articulated so loud. And I was like, wow, this is who I am. I should not be ashamed of who I am. I should be proud of myself. And this was what I liked on that session, because that session that we had, it was not at all like, okay, now these are our differences. So how do we, I don't know, mitigate our differences so that we are all the same and walk the same direction? It was the opposite. It was like, this is who we are. And now these are the techniques how we can maximize this potential that we all have to work together better. So it helped me to accept myself, realize who I am actually. And then this is what was so forming for me, like to have that feeling that I can actually be myself, and it can be very beneficial for others because we are all different. So how I use it today, so literally my teams, they did MBTI testing as well. And we are very transparent about it. So some people from my team, they even use these virtual backgrounds that when they connect to Zoom calls or team calls, they have virtual background and say, I am whatever, IFTP or something like that, because they also see that as a tool to communicate better and collaborate better. I'm always very transparent about my profile because I want to be a good leader, and I don't want people to be guessing, like, what did she mean? Why is she like that? So I always tell them, this is who I am. So let's talk about it. Let's find a way, but let's play it on our strengths and not try to change ourselves into someone who we are simply not.
Wow. So I love that it helps with self-acceptance. I would ask, does self-acceptance mean self-love?
Yeah, definitely you can put it this way.
So let's grabbing that as a segue, because this is the first episode in this season 4 of the podcast, and this is inspired by the work I've been doing on leading from love. And before we started, you asked, can we get into that? Like, what does that mean? What, for me, what is leading from love? And maybe I can take a moment to tell the story a little bit, just very briefly.
Yeah.
About 4 years ago or so, I started writing the book about the simple business design canvas that I use in my business design consulting. And also with another team, we started porting that to sustainability. But the writing of that for me was cold, it was crunchy, it was rigid, it was not fun, it was not flowing for me. And what I started to realize is when I'm using kind of this intellectual business canvas approach, the real magic was happening at a different level, meaning there was fears, there was concerns, there was ego, there was beliefs going on that I started to realize that there's something else going on here other than this intellectual management science approach, which I guess I always knew, call it the human dimension, but I'd never really quantified. And in parallel to that, I've been doing some deep meditative work, going on some week-long meditation retreats, and just kept diving deeper into myself. And this comes into that self-awareness, that self-discovery, that self-love. And those two things continued to come together, where I started to observe that some of the very rigid, more traditional management techniques, I started to feel that they were a bit lazy. Like, oh, let's have KPIs and drive people with KPIs, but without really interest or care if the KPIs were achievable, or if the people had the right tools, or if they had the right capabilities. It was more just driving for output than actual interest in the human dimension. And this is where the concept of lazy leadership versus love leadership came from. And then I could just continue to explore that. And at a certain point, if you remember Vahid Daimi, the CEO of LeasePlan Later, I think he was the COO when you were there. He was the sponsor of the Your DC project. I still have the privilege of having lunch with him every year or so. And when he mentioned that, oh, if you're starting to research love, you should go look at Rumi, the Persian mystic and poet from the 13th century, which I had known about. Rumi's, I believe, the most famous poet today, because he's been translated by people like Deepak Chopra and has been sung about by Madonna and things. But when I was in that journey, I realized that a lot of this dimensions of love, which starts for me with self-acceptance, self-love, embracing yourself. And what I realized is that, as for me as a leader, that has to be where it starts. Meaning, if I'm not caring for myself, then how could you ever care for others? If I'm not investing and nourishing myself, how could I invest and nourish in others? And my belief is, if you want an organization to grow, the people have to grow as well. Meaning, the way to grow an organization commercially, for example, the only way to do that is to invest in the humans. And that for me is an act of love. It's an act of conscious investment in others. And that's where things evolved from there. And so for me, the leadership, I'm not sure if anyone has an actual definition of leadership, but let's say leadership is providing the space and the let's just call it the space. So vision, direction, tools, processes, the space for people to connect and perform. And I'm going to take a stab at defining love. I'm not sure if that's the safe thing to do anywhere, but for me, love is what is left in a person when the ego is removed and the physical dimensions removed, and you are just truly yourself. That essence, that soul, that spirit. For me, that is the essence of love. And if you connect to that, of course, you can connect to other people. And so, yeah, that's the playful journey of leading from love. And to simplify it, it's love yourself as a leader in order to love and care for others, which of course, results in positive outcomes and growth. So I don't know, what does leading from love mean to you? Like, when you first heard those words, what happened within you when you said, oh, let's have a conversation about leading from love? What happened within you?
Well, it was very intriguing for me, because I never heard that connection, that formulation before, leading from love, leading with love. Because for me, love, that sounds like a very personal, intimate concept that I would probably keep for myself. And leading, that typically happens at work. But then it got me thinking, because For instance, I am very happy in my current job and the current organization that I work for because we are purpose-driven, not-for-profit global organization. And that we lead with purpose. And our new strategy is fully based on the foundation of that purpose. I have to say that for me, this is even for the first time ever that I'm experiencing this, that it's true, that you really have a purpose that was formulated with people. It took us half a year, by the way, just to formulate the sentence that has just a few words. And then we base our strategy on that.
What is that sentence? What I'm really curious. What is that sentence? What is that purpose statement?
So our purpose is to maximize project success, to elevate our world. So there are two parts in that. So to maximize project success is more dimensions, is to help organizations, professionals to be more successful with changes that they do because they need to transform because of everything that is happening around us. And then the second part, to elevate our world. That's for me even more intriguing because that's thinking about that impact. Why are you doing things? How can you make the world around you better? And it can be initiatives focused on sustainability, but the world around you is also your office, your teammates, your colleagues, people. So whatever your world means, you can use your skills to make it better, to elevate it. And the strategy that we build is all based around that. And for instance, for me, it's amazing because with my teams, we have very clear direction. We kind of like really use our talents and skills to contribute to that purpose. And it's great. It's elevating because it gives you that meaning at your work. Like it answers your question, why do you show up every day at work, very easily? And so when I go back to the question, like, what does it mean leading with love? So for me, leading with love means really that leading with purpose. Like I am, it's just my personality. It would be difficult for me to use the word love at work environment. So I would probably replace it for me with that purpose. It's just like kind of like more acceptable for me. But I really like that concept. And what is very interesting, and this is just a total coincidence, but just yesterday, I finished our internal leadership accountability training. It's a program that we do for all of our leaders, managers. And we talked about a lot how leadership is a hard discipline. And you also need to be surrounded by people who support you on different levels and in different ways. And you obviously need to be able to cope with these challenges, to work on your own resilience, to basically take care of yourself. Because if, as you said, if you cannot take care of yourself, how are you supposed to take care of your teams, etc.? So again, like when I take your word laugh, it actually fits very nicely with everything that we discussed in the past days. So as I said, like for me, it's very intriguing concept.
Well, just to play with the words a little bit, I consciously chose lead from love over lead with love. And I don't, and for me, it felt like lead with love was like, it was outside of me a little bit. Like I'm holding the hand of love. And for me, I chose the lead from love because it seemed like it was more of an essence of coming from within. And as I've been playing with people, what I've realized is there's leadership accountability. There are some very intellectual, rational dimensions of leadership accountability, and then there's also, as you said, like resilience and being followership and having followers. Because of course anyone can be a leader. That's not like a manager, so the leadership is an abstract thing, but there's this relational human thing. But then there's also this say spiritual or intuitional dimension. I mean, one of my beliefs or facts that I've discovered is the more that I am solid, call it resilient, so not in a state of overwhelm, not in a state of stress, not in a state of fear, not in a state of all those things that disconnect me from my inner love. My inner compass, my intuition is much more trustworthy, that I can actually reflect and say, okay, there's a rational part. I've done the strategic analysis. I've also checked with stakeholders, and myself, my subconscious self, my intuition self also is contributing to this. And for me, this is where if you find a harmony in those things, that's where leading from love really starts to shine and become powerful.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Like, I would probably have to disappoint you because I think our personality profiles are very different.
Yeah.
We are almost like the opposites. So again, I feel like I know what you mean. In my world, I would use different words for me that better fit my kind of like internal, I don't know how to call it, like way of thinking. But for me, what is absolutely important, and for me it's like a deal breaker, it's a no-go, is when I perform any leadership role, it has to match with my personal values. And that's boring things like transparency and ethics and stuff like that. But for me, it's really a deal breaker. Like, I cannot do anything if I don't trust it, if I'm not deeply convinced that I am doing a right thing. And that again goes to that self-respect and self-care, because if you truly believe in it, then you are willing to put your energy in that. It guides you, and then it motivates you and it helps you with your personal resilience, because then you recharge the energy that you put into something that you believe. And I honestly cannot imagine working without that. And unfortunately, I mean it literally, because if I worked ever in an environment when these personal values were broken, I just left. I could not stay there. It was not acceptable for me.
And sadly, some people do. And sadly, that some spaces don't have the, call it psychological safety, or, they don't have the space for people to talk about that. And then, So the theme of this series, this season of the podcast, is about Rumi, the Persian poet. The book that's coming out. So maybe when this is published, the pre-sale or sale might actually already be available. But the book is called Lead from Love with Rumi. I'll put the link to it in the show notes. And what the invitation was to, Lenka, have you pick a phrase from a Rumi poem, and you chose, "As you start to walk on the way appears."
Yes.
And I would love to hear more from you on why that's the case. And just to be a little cheeky and confronting, you work for the Project Management Institute, and typically projects, by a certain definition, I know you have a lot of Agile in your background, but can be very waterfall and very defined and very planned. And then the quote that you picked was almost the opposite, meaning start to walk in the way appears. So I would love to, what happened, and I'm looking at your face with that smile, something happened when you were playing with this quote. So as you start to walk on the way appears. What does that mean to you?
So it means everything, because I'm actually a transformation person. So I can talk about that for ages. But you know what? You challenged me a little bit on that project management side, and I cannot just let it go, because sorry, Chris, but what you just said, that is such an old news. So, in my role, one of my teams that is part of my Office of the CEO group is called Thought Leadership. What we do is essentially R&D department of the Project Management Institute. So we do research to see what are the drivers for project success. But not only that, because project success, it exists only in a context. So we are looking at what is driving the transformation. And when you look at the impact of digital disruption, the need for sustainability, now the rise of Agile and everything, of artificial intelligence and everything, what we see on data is that in the past few years, the way how projects are delivered completely shifted towards hybrid way of working. This is what our data are talking about, and this is how we are supporting our community to understand that. So there is no more true waterfall. I mean, it's very difficult to achieve any true waterfall, because the things are changing so rapidly around you that if you really follow any true waterfall, it's quite a real risk that you start something that loses its meaning on the way before you get there. So the quote that I chose really speaks to me, because that's about transformation, and there are many dimensions that I see that if you want to achieve something, that's not always realistic to expect that there will be an easy, like light path for you just to walk on, and you start somewhere and then you finish and it's done. I feel it doesn't work like that at all. So I think that it's also a little bit about overcoming that fear that you start walking and you don't know where the path goes, right? So this is how it speaks to me, because for me, when I think about transformation or transformative initiatives or projects or agile teams and everything, I like to see a vision. I call it a horizon. You see the horizon, but then you cannot be blocked by that fear or anxiety that you don't see the every step in your path, in your way. You just have to start walking, and then use your senses and use your colleagues and use your talents and your skills and everything to discover that way as you walk on that path. And then for me, it's also a little bit like trust the process, like trust yourself. You will get there. Just don't stop walking, because if you stop walking, then you will never get to your destination.
I love it. I couldn't help but being a little bit cheeky. I figured with your agile background and yeah, project management has definitely evolved. I would even argue that waterfall maybe has never existed, because
Yeah.
It's always, there's always adaptation, meaning the context is always changing. Yeah, I think connected to the essence of the conversation around leading from love. I think the words you just shared are beautiful, meaning don't be operating from fear and doubt. Take that first step, have the confidence that you will be okay. Like, and you, with all your skills and your experience and your ability to learn, your ability to work with others, there's an incredible amount that you can achieve. And usually the greatest achievements you probably couldn't even have imagined when you first started. Meaning, until you get
Yes.
out there and working with people and start realizing that there's other opportunities, there's other problems to solve, that honestly, if you would have stayed in a boardroom analyzing it, you would never have discovered that. So take the step and move, and also give yourself the freedom to I guess allow sometimes the unexpected and the mysterious to happen, because sometimes those happy little accidents, that come along, that are like, wait, this could be an incredibly different or better way of thinking about this problem or achieving this thing. So it's no, I love that. I love that quote. Thank you so much for bringing that up and playing with the concept of project management. So do you think your thought leadership people will do a piece on project management from love? I don't know, maybe.
Wow.
Maybe.
Well, okay, I didn't think about it yet, but
Yeah.
we can explore, we can maybe work on that together. But you know what, just going back to leadership and a little bit of work environment, I wanted to give you an example. So just yesterday, was it yesterday, maybe 2 days ago, so I had a meeting with my thought leadership team, the leaders of the thought leadership team, and we were working on our future strategy for one part of our operations. And then our colleague, he prepared a presentation. And I don't know, maybe he will hear this. So I hope he will hear it. And then he prepared a presentation, and he had really beautiful slides and colors, and everything was so neat and everything. And, during that 1 hour conversation, we changed everything. And for me, that was an amazing experience. And I truly hope that everyone who was on that call appreciated that spirit of innovating, improving, because that's exactly for me, like, let's start. But if you come to me with a concept, I don't expect the concept to be perfect. I accept the concept to be a starter for discussion so that we can co-create, we can formulate it better together, right? Because back to your very original point, it's about diversity. Innovation, it's all about diversity. If you all would be thinking the same way, then we probably don't get anywhere, right? So for me, I never look at people in my team like, did they prepare a perfect slide deck? No. I mean, like, are they able to have that conversation? Are they open to hear other ideas? Can they explain why they did this and that? And can they evolve during that discussion? And so for me, this discussion that we had matched all these expectations, and I felt so good about that. And so we evolved. But at the beginning of that meeting, I had no clue where are we going to end up, but we ended up in a great place. Like, so this is also what this quote represents for me. Like, don't feel the need to have everything perfectly described before you even start with anything. And, just a very, maybe a personal note, this is actually exactly how I cook.
You cook?
I love cooking. I don't like baking because I don't know if you know the difference, but baking, that's actually a science. It's really like engineering kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about chemistry, which I never bothered to understand. So I don't like baking because if you don't follow the procedure, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
But cooking, that's innovation, that's inspiration.
Yeah.
Like, oh, let's cook something and let's check what's in the kitchen, and then you mix this and that, and you put some herbs, and then it's great. And you cook, you put that love in it, so you cook from love. But it's all about but it's all about just like understanding how these ingredients work together, and then don't be afraid to experiment. Then you create something unique. And this is how I also look at working with people, working with my teams. Like, just don't be afraid to experiment. Just trust yourself, like trust the journey, trust the process.
And it sounds like you've made that explicit, meaning speaking it out loud here, for your team and other people to listen to. And it sounds like that even though that person polished something to a pretty high level of quality, that person was also checked into the process that they were open to shifting it as well. Meaning it sounds like that person, obviously I wasn't there, but wasn't rigid in defending the color scheme of the slides, because they had perfect colors. And it was actually, hey, this is, these are the ingredients that I'm going to bring to this cooking session. I think it's kind of like this. This has been my best try with the information that I have. Here's the ingredients. What else do people have? How can we make this better? And I think that is those are magical moments. And that's where the new insights and the innovation comes from.
Exactly. From that openness, but also, and now I will just make a U-turn to the very beginning of this conversation, because it also comes from our investment of our time in understanding ourselves and our colleagues. Because after all, these sessions, it's all about communication. You need to understand that people have positive intentions. So they do not challenge something written on a slide, on a PowerPoint slide, to criticize. They challenge it because they are asking the right questions. And for that, people need to know each other. They need to build these relationships so that they really understand that this is creative environment. So just like, again, I have to say, I am incredibly grateful for that experience that we had 20 years ago on that project. And a lot of things that I still do are really based on that big eye opener, even if it sounds super simple, like 4 letters and we understand each other. But for me, that was a big deal. And I still believe that even in our digital world and all the technology and everything, it's so critical to be able to form our relationships based on understanding each other.
Understand each other and ourselves. And it sounds like maybe with different words that you are leading with love, and your team is connecting with themselves and supporting each other in a very loving way. So wonderful. Lenka, thank you so much for joining. Again, as you start to walk on the way appears. What a lovely quote. If people would like to learn more, Lenka is on LinkedIn. I'll put her link to her LinkedIn profile in the show notes. Project Management Institute is at pmi.org. You can learn more about that if you're into transformation and change. There's a lot of assets and resources there. Lenka, thank you so much for joining and sharing your view and vision on leading from love.
Thank you for listening. Visit ebullient.com to download the Simple Business Design Framework. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the podcast on your favorite player.